Influence does not begin when people start following you. It begins long before that, in the way you control yourself, the way you think, the way you respond under pressure, and the way you treat people when there is nothing to gain from them. Many people want the appearance of leadership. They want the title, the attention, the authority, and the recognition. But leadership is not a costume you put on. It is a responsibility you prove through repeated behavior. Master yourself before leading others, because leadership begins with the ability to govern your own thoughts, emotions, habits, and decisions. Many people want influence because they imagine leadership as having authority over others, but real influence becomes difficult when you cannot control yourself. A person who reacts impulsively to criticism becomes angry under pressure, constantly changes direction, or allows distractions to dominate the day will eventually lose credibility. People may obey such a person temporarily because of their position, but obedience created by authority is not the same as influence created by respect. Before asking others to follow your direction, you must demonstrate that you can follow your own principles. Self-mastery begins with emotional control. Every day presents situations designed to provoke reactions. Someone may insult you, challenge your opinion, ignore your contribution, or make a decision you dislike. The natural impulse is to respond immediately, but immediate reactions often reveal weakness rather than strength. A leader learns to create space between an event and a response. That small pause gives you the opportunity to choose your behavior instead of allowing emotion to choose it for you. Staying calm does not mean becoming emotionless. It means understanding your emotions without becoming controlled by them. Anger can provide information, fear can reveal risk, and disappointment can reveal expectations, but none of these emotions should automatically become your decision maker. Self-mastery also requires control over attention. A distracted leader creates distracted people. If you constantly check your phone, jump between tasks, chase every new idea, and allow interruptions to control your schedule, your mind becomes fragmented. You cannot expect a team to remain focused when you cannot remain focused yourself. Protect your important hours. Decide what deserves your attention and refuse to give equal importance to everything that demands it. Your attention is a form of leadership because people observe what you consider important. If you consistently concentrate on meaningful work, others learn to value concentration as well. Discipline is another foundation of self-mastery. Leadership often requires doing what needs to be done rather than what feels comfortable. There will be mornings when you do not feel motivated, meetings you would rather avoid, difficult conversations you would rather postpone, and responsibilities that provide no immediate reward. A leader who only acts when inspired becomes unreliable. Develop standards that remain stable even when your mood changes. Keep your commitments. Arrive prepared, complete important tasks, correct mistakes. Continue when the initial excitement disappears. Repeated discipline creates self-trust, and self-trust creates confidence that does not depend on external approval. A leader must also master the ego. The desire to always appear intelligent, powerful, or correct can destroy judgment. If your identity depends on winning every argument, you will reject useful information simply because it challenges you. If you need constant praise, criticism will destabilize you. If you believe you must have every answer, you may prevent capable people from contributing. Strong leadership requires enough humility to say, I do not know, I was wrong, or there is a better idea. This does not weaken authority, it demonstrates security. People trust leaders who can admit reality without becoming defensive. Self-mastery also means knowing your weaknesses. Everyone has predictable patterns. Some people procrastinate when tasks become difficult. Others become aggressive when they feel disrespected. Some avoid conflict until problems become larger. Others speak too quickly and reveal more than necessary. Identify your patterns without excuses. When you understand where you are vulnerable, you can create systems that protect you from your worst impulses. The leader who understands himself becomes harder to manipulate because he recognizes what triggers him. He does not need to eliminate every weakness before leading. He needs to understand them well enough that they do not secretly control his decisions. As self-control grows, your presence changes. You become calmer under pressure, more deliberate in speech, more consistent in action, and less dependent on approval. People begin to sense that you are not easily pushed by fear, anger, temptation, or distraction. That stability becomes a source of influence because others naturally look toward the person who can remain composed when circumstances become uncertain. Understand what motivates people because influence becomes far stronger when you stop assuming that everyone wants the same things you want. A leader who understands human motivation can communicate more effectively, assign responsibilities more intelligently, resolve conflicts with greater awareness, and create an environment where people genuinely want to contribute. Many people make the mistake of trying to lead through their own preferences. They think, this motivates me, so it should motivate them. But people are different. One person may be driven by recognition, another by independence, another by security, another by achievement, and another by the desire to belong to something meaningful. If you fail to recognize these differences, even a good idea can receive weak support because the people hearing it cannot see why it matters to them. Understanding motivation begins with listening. Do not listen only to the words people use. Pay attention to what they repeatedly emphasize. Notice what they celebrate, what they complain about, what they fear losing, and what makes them become enthusiastic. Someone who constantly talks about improving their skills may value growth more than immediate rewards. Someone who frequently worries about uncertainty may value stability. Someone who wants responsibility may be motivated by autonomy and trust. These observations help you understand what matters, but you should avoid assuming that one observation tells you everything about a person. Human beings are complicated, and motivations can change depending on circumstances. A good leader remains curious rather than pretending to know everything about people. Questions are one of the most powerful tools for understanding motivation. Ask people what they want to accomplish. Ask what obstacles are frustrating them. Ask what kind of responsibility they would like to take. Ask what support would help them perform better. When people have an opportunity to explain themselves, they often reveal information that cannot be discovered through assumptions. Listening also creates respect because people recognize when someone is genuinely interested in their perspective. Once you understand motivation, communication becomes more precise. Suppose you are introducing a difficult project. You could simply tell people that they must complete it because you are the leader. That may produce compliance, but it may not create commitment. Instead, explain why the project matters and connect it with meaningful outcomes. If someone values learning, explain what skills they will develop. If someone values responsibility, give them ownership over an important part of the project. If someone values recognition, make sure strong contributions are acknowledged appropriately. This is not about manipulating people. It is about connecting responsibilities with genuine human motivations. A leader should also understand what demotivates people. Constant criticism, unclear expectations, unfair treatment, lack of recognition, excessive control, and inconsistent decisions can destroy enthusiasm. Sometimes the problem is not that people lack motivation, but that the environment is making motivation difficult. If you want people to perform at a high level, examine whether your leadership is creating unnecessary obstacles, give clear expectations, provide useful feedback, allow reasonable autonomy, recognize meaningful effort, correct problems without humiliating people. This creates an environment where people can focus on their responsibilities rather than constantly protecting themselves. Understanding motivation is especially important during conflict. When two people disagree, the visible argument may not reveal the real issue. One person may be defending a principle, while another is protecting their status. Someone may resist a change because they fear losing control. Another may be angry because they feel ignored. If you only attack the surface argument, the conflict may continue. If you understand the underlying concern, you may find a solution that addresses the real problem. A strong leader therefore learns to look beneath behavior. Do not simply ask, "What did this person do?" Ask, "What might be driving this behavior?" That question creates greater strategic awareness. You must also understand your own motivations because self-awareness affects your ability to read others. If you are desperate for approval, you may misinterpret disagreement as disrespect. If you are obsessed with control, you may see independence as disloyalty. If you constantly need recognition, you may unintentionally compete with the people you are supposed to develop. Knowing yourself helps you separate your emotions from your observations. Ultimately, understanding motivation allows leadership to become less about forcing behavior and more about creating conditions where people willingly contribute. When people feel understood, respected, and connected to a meaningful purpose, influence becomes more natural. You are no longer simply telling people what to do. You are helping them see why their effort matters, while also recognizing the individual reasons that make them willing to give that effort. Speak with clarity and purpose, because an influential leader cannot depend on volume, complicated language, or constant talking to create authority. People follow direction more easily when they understand what is expected, why it matters, and what action should come next. Confused communication creates confused behavior. When a leader gives vague instructions, changes priorities without explanation, or speaks for too long without identifying the main point, people are forced to guess. Guessing creates uncertainty, and uncertainty weakens confidence. Clear communication begins with knowing what you actually want to say before you say it. A leader should ask, "What is the essential message?" If the answer cannot be expressed simply, the idea may not yet be clear enough in the leader's own mind. This does not mean every subject is simple. Complex situations may require detailed explanations, but even complicated subjects should have a clear central purpose. People should know what the problem is, what matters most, and what needs to happen next. Purpose gives communication direction. Without purpose, conversation can become performance. Some people speak because silence makes them uncomfortable. They repeat points, add unnecessary details, and continue long after the important message has already been understood. An influential leader knows that more words do not automatically create more authority. Sometimes a short, precise statement has greater impact than a long explanation. Clarity also requires choosing language that people can understand. Avoid unnecessary jargon when a simple word will do. If you want people to act, tell them what action is required. If you want them to understand a decision, explain the reason behind it. If there is uncertainty, acknowledge it rather than pretending to have complete knowledge. Honesty can strengthen credibility because people recognize the difference between confidence and false certainty. Another important part of clear communication is listening. Leadership is not a one-way broadcast. If you speak without listening, you may be giving instructions based on information that is incomplete or outdated. Ask questions, invite useful feedback. Pay attention to what people are not saying as well as what they are saying. Sometimes hesitation, silence, or repeated confusion signals that your message has not been understood. A strong leader does not interpret questions as challenges to authority. Questions can reveal weaknesses in the plan before those weaknesses become expensive mistakes. You should also learn to communicate differently depending on the situation. A team facing an urgent problem may need direct instructions and immediate priorities. A creative group may need space for discussion and experimentation. A person receiving difficult feedback may need privacy and respect rather than public criticism. Clarity does not mean using the same communication style everywhere. It means making the message appropriate to the purpose and the audience. Tone matters as well. You can communicate firmly without becoming aggressive. You can disagree without humiliating someone. You can give criticism without attacking character. When people understand that your goal is improvement rather than domination, they become more willing to hear difficult information. Timing is another part of effective communication. The right message delivered at the wrong moment may fail. If emotions are extremely high, a complicated discussion may only create more resistance. Sometimes the best decision is to pause, allow people to regain composure, and return to the issue when everyone can think more clearly. A leader should also understand that repeated behavior communicates louder than speeches. If you constantly tell people that quality matters but accept careless work, your actions destroy your words. If you demand punctuality but arrive late, people will follow the example rather than the instruction. Communication, therefore, includes everything you consistently do. Your standards, decisions, reactions, and habits are messages. The strongest leaders make their words and actions agree. When people see consistency, they know what to expect. That predictability creates trust. Finally, do not use communication to prove that you are the smartest person in the room. Use it to make the room smarter. Explain the objective, ask useful questions, clarify confusion, listen carefully, and help people understand what matters. When your communication consistently produces clarity rather than confusion, people begin to value your presence. They know that when you speak, there is a reason. That is how words become a source of influence, not through performance, but through precision, purpose, honesty, and the ability to move people toward meaningful action. Build trust through consistent actions, because influence without trust is temporary. A person may gain authority through a position, wealth, intelligence, or confidence, but people rarely give their deepest cooperation to someone they consider unreliable. Trust develops slowly through repeated experiences. People watch what you do when circumstances become difficult, when nobody is watching, and when keeping your word becomes inconvenient. Your speeches may create an impression, but your patterns create your reputation. This is why an influential leader should focus less on appearing impressive and more on becoming dependable. If you promise to do something, make every reasonable effort to deliver it. If circumstances change and you cannot fulfill a commitment, communicate honestly instead of disappearing. People can often accept an unexpected problem when they believe the person responsible is acting in good faith. What destroys trust is not always failure itself. It is inconsistency, excuses, secrecy, and repeated behavior that contradicts what was promised. Consistency also means applying standards fairly. If you expect people to arrive prepared, you should arrive prepared. If you expect discipline, demonstrate discipline. If you demand honesty, do not hide uncomfortable information simply because the truth makes you look bad. Leadership becomes powerful when your behavior confirms your words. People do not need to constantly hear that you are responsible when your actions repeatedly demonstrate responsibility. Trust also requires admitting mistakes. Some leaders believe authority means never appearing wrong, so they defend poor decisions long after the evidence shows that the decision failed. This creates a dangerous environment because people learn that truth is less important than protecting the leader's ego. A stronger leader can say, I made the wrong call, identify what went wrong, and change direction. Admitting a mistake does not automatically weaken authority. In many situations, it strengthens credibility because it shows that reality matters more than pride. Another foundation of trust is keeping information confidential when confidentiality is appropriate. If people discover that you constantly repeat private conversations, they will become careful about what they tell you. A leader who cannot protect sensitive information eventually loses access to honest information. And without honest information, decision-making becomes weaker. Trust also requires treating people with respect, especially those who cannot offer you immediate benefits. Watch how a person behaves toward employees, assistants, beginners, or people who disagree with them. Character becomes visible when there is little incentive to perform. An influential leader should avoid humiliating people simply to demonstrate authority. Public embarrassment may produce silence, but silence is not loyalty. People may obey while privately becoming resentful. Correct mistakes firmly when necessary, but focus on the behavior and the solution rather than attacking the person's dignity. Consistency is equally important during pressure. Anyone can appear calm when everything is going well. Leadership becomes visible when plans fail, deadlines approach, conflict appears, or unexpected problems emerge. If you become unpredictable whenever pressure rises, people will hesitate to rely on you. Develop the habit of pausing before reacting, gather information, identify the real problem, and communicate what needs to happen next. Calm behavior creates stability for everyone around you. You should also recognize that trust is built through small actions, not only major promises. Remembering an important detail, responding when you said you would, giving credit to someone who earned it, correcting misinformation, and following through on ordinary responsibilities all contribute to your reputation. These actions may seem insignificant individually, but repeated over months and years, they create a powerful pattern. Eventually, people know what to expect from you. They know that your word has weight because your behavior has repeatedly supported it. That is the foundation of influence. You do not need to demand trust. You earn it through evidence. When people consistently see that your words match your actions, your decisions are thoughtful, your standards are fair, and your commitments are taken seriously, they become more willing to follow your direction even when the path becomes difficult. Make difficult decisions without losing your humanity because leadership is tested most seriously when there is no perfect choice. Anyone can lead when everything is easy, everyone agrees, and the outcome is obvious. The real test appears when resources are limited, people disagree, mistakes have consequences, or a decision will disappoint someone. In those moments, weak leadership often takes one of two forms. Some people avoid the decision because they fear criticism, while others become unnecessarily harsh because they believe authority requires emotional distance. Neither approach creates lasting influence. A strong leader learns to make difficult decisions while remembering that every decision affects real people. The first requirement is accepting responsibility. When a difficult situation appears, do not immediately search for someone to blame. First, understand what happened, what information is available, and what must be protected. Separate facts from emotions. A person may be angry, frightened, or disappointed, but those emotions do not automatically reveal the best solution. Listen to them, but do not allow them to become the entire basis of your decision. A leader must be capable of thinking clearly while acknowledging the emotional reality of the people involved. Difficult decisions also require understanding consequences. Before acting, ask what happens immediately, what happens afterward, and what problems your decision may create later. A quick solution can sometimes produce a larger problem. Consider different options, identify the risks, and determine which outcome best serves the larger objective. This does not mean waiting forever for certainty. Complete certainty rarely exists. Leadership requires acting with incomplete information while remaining willing to adjust when new evidence appears. Another important quality is fairness. People do not expect every decision to benefit them personally, but they often want to believe that the process was honest. Explain relevant reasons when appropriate. Apply standards consistently. Do not change principles simply because a powerful person is involved. If people believe that decisions are based on favoritism, fear, or personal revenge, trust will disappear. A leader must also understand the difference between firmness and cruelty. Sometimes you must say no. Sometimes someone must lose a responsibility because they repeatedly fail to meet the required standard. Sometimes a project must be canceled. Sometimes a difficult conversation cannot be avoided. Being compassionate does not mean refusing to make these decisions. It means making them without unnecessary humiliation. You can be firm about standards while still respecting the person affected by the decision. Do not use someone's failure as an opportunity to demonstrate your power. Focus on what must change and why. Your emotional control matters greatly during these moments. If you become angry, sarcastic, or defensive, people may remember your emotional reaction more than the actual decision. Pause before responding. Choose your words carefully. A calm voice can communicate strength without creating unnecessary fear. People are more likely to accept difficult direction from someone who appears controlled rather than someone who appears driven by emotion. You should also be willing to hear information that challenges your preferred decision. An insecure leader surrounds himself with agreement. A secure leader wants accurate information. Encourage people to point out risks before a decision is finalized. Once the decision is made, however, communicate it clearly and take responsibility for the outcome. Do not repeatedly blame others when the result is unfavorable. If the decision was yours, own it. If it fails, learn from it. If it succeeds, recognize the people who helped make it possible. This creates a culture where responsibility is valued rather than avoided. Difficult decisions can reveal character because they force you to choose between comfort and responsibility. The influential leader does not seek cruelty, but neither does he hide from necessary action. He understands that compassion without boundaries can create disorder, while authority without humanity creates resentment. The goal is to combine courage with judgment, firmness with respect, and decisiveness with empathy. Dock-weight leaders instead of followers, because the highest form of influence is not making people dependent on you, but helping them develop the ability to think, decide, and act for themselves. A weak leader often measures success by how many people need their approval. They want every decision to pass through them, every problem to reach them, and every achievement to depend on their presence. This may make them feel powerful, but it creates a fragile system. If the leader disappears, everything slows down. People become afraid to make decisions because they have been trained to wait for instructions. Real leadership works differently. An influential leader develops capable people who can eventually carry responsibility without constant supervision. This begins by giving people meaningful responsibility rather than keeping all important tasks for yourself. If you always take control because you believe nobody can perform as well as you may create the very weakness you complain about. People cannot develop judgment if they are never allowed to make decisions. Give them responsibility appropriate to their ability, explain the objective, establish clear boundaries, and allow them room to think. Mistakes will happen, but reasonable mistakes can become powerful learning experiences when people are encouraged to analyze what went wrong and improve. This does not mean abandoning people without guidance. A leader should provide support while gradually increasing independence. Instead of immediately solving every problem, ask questions that help people solve problems themselves. What do you think caused this? What options do you see? What would happen if we chose this approach? What information are we missing? Questions develop judgment more effectively than constant instructions. Over time, people learn to think rather than simply obey. Teaching is another essential part of developing leaders. Share knowledge that helps others become more capable. Explain how you approach decisions, how you evaluate risks, how you communicate under pressure, and how you recover from mistakes. Do not protect your knowledge simply because it gives you an advantage. If your goal is long-term influence, increasing the ability of the people around you creates far more value than keeping everyone dependent on your expertise. Recognition also matters. When someone performs well, give them appropriate credit. Do not take their achievements and present them as your own. A leader who constantly absorbs attention eventually creates resentment. People want to know that their contribution is visible and meaningful. Publicly recognizing strong work can encourage others, but recognition should be sincere rather than a manipulation technique. You should also create opportunities for people to take ownership. If someone is capable of leading a meeting, let them lead it. If someone has a strong idea, give them space to develop it. If someone demonstrates competence, increase their responsibility. Leadership should become a pathway through which people grow. At the same time, standards must remain clear. Empowerment does not mean allowing careless behavior. Give people freedom within defined expectations. They should know what success looks like, what boundaries cannot be crossed, and what consequences follow repeated irresponsibility. Freedom without standards becomes disorder. Standards without freedom become suffocation. Effective leadership balances both. Creating leaders also requires accepting that others may eventually become better than you in certain areas. An insecure leader feels threatened when someone becomes highly capable. A strong leader sees that development as evidence of success. You should want the people around you to become more skilled, more confident, and more independent. Their growth does not diminish your influence. It expands the impact of everything you have built. The ultimate test of leadership is what happens when you are not present. If people continue making good decisions, solving problems, supporting one another, and moving toward the shared objective, you have built something stronger than personal authority. You have built leadership capacity. Influence becomes sustainable when it is transferred rather than hoarded. Instead of asking, how can I make people follow me? Ask, how can I help people become capable enough to lead? That shift changes everything. You stop collecting followers and start developing human potential. You become less concerned with being the center of attention and more concerned with building a system where others can succeed. That is how influence grows beyond the individual and becomes a lasting force.